Hello everybody, it's Michelle, and I am really excited because today I am doing my very first book review. So I wanted to talk today about The Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. This is going to be good. This is probably one of my favorite books that I've ever read in general, not to mention my favorite book that I've read this past year. And this is the first year that I really got back into reading, so I was reading, new things, and I was really getting into that, so I was really, really pumped to actually get this book and to read it, finally. The plot sounded really interesting, but it also had the potential to suck, so I was really nervous when I picked this up. I had heard amazing things. My best friend, Amanda Pearl, she is the one who recommended that I read this book. And I had never read anything by Laini Taylor before The Daughter of Smoke and Bone. So I was really shocked when I found out that this new author that I'd never heard of and this book that I wasn't quite sure about but I was still kind of pumped about was fantastic. This world that she creates is so unique. I feel like people have done the vampire thing. They've done the paranormal romance thing. And it's so boring. I'm so over it. And I have something in my eye. And I was just hoping that this would not be mainly romance. When I heard paranormal romance associated with this book, I was nervous. And I don't think it's marketed as just paranormal romance, but there's definitely something going on in this book. So when I first started reading, I was pleasantly surprised because it wasn't this juvenile, basic writing. I actually would classify this more as adult, more adult than young, I guess. And the way that Laini Taylor writes is, it's melodic, it's lyrical, it's, I don't know, it's just beautiful. And the descriptions are, in my opinion, fresh and new, it's not like, and the metal on the churches, they were shining like stars, I mean, shining like stars, everybody knows what that means, but she was coming up with new things that I hadn't really heard that often. One of the things that she said about the church spires was that they were waiting, it looked as if they were waiting to impale a fallen angel, and I thought, first of all, how perfect for this book. Here's my kitty. Fusa! Oh. I hope he doesn't make my camera fall down. But when I read that, I thought, that is so interesting. I love it. So automatically, I'm just drinking this book in. Then we meet Carew pretty early. I think she's like the first person we meet. And I love her name. It's so interesting. I love how unique she is. And I also really appreciate the fact that I don't know everything about Carew the first time I meet her. I like how not everything is explained to me in black and white. Not like, she has blue hair, and that was weird, and she likes art. I mean, some people do that. They'll list things that their character is supposed to embody, but we experience Carew in this book. We learn more and more about her, as she's learning about herself, too. And at first, we're learning about, Brimstone, and Akiva, no, not Akiva, he's the angel. Crap, oh my gosh. Like Twigga and all of those people. We learn about them as drawings, but then she speaks about them as if they're real. And so at first I was like, wait a minute, is she nuts? Or is this really where we're going with this book? And wouldn't you know it, that's where we went with this book. And it wasn't weird. It wasn't weird to have these mythical creatures hanging around with this girl with blue hair. It seemed like, yeah, that's what happens. And I haven't read a book like that. Maybe there are books out there like this, but I've never read that. And I loved I loved Brimstone. I could totally imagine Brimstone. He just seemed like this incredibly wise and loving being, but on the outside, he's kind of a D-bag. Like, I mean, he's nice to you, but he has his reasons and he doesn't always explain them to you, so you can misinterpret those as being, you know, overly protective or not fair or whatever. But really, everything that he does has a purpose, and I really like that about him. I could hear his voice. I could almost smell him coming out of these pages. So I think that's really why I love this book. This book, to me, it wasn't just about reading. It wasn't just about the lyrical writing. It was about my senses opening up and experiencing the book. I also was rarely able to put this down. I only had to put it down sometimes. So that's why it took me a couple days to actually finish it. But if I had my way, it would have been done in a day or two, maybe just a weekend. And for me, that's pretty quick. So I was really, really impressed by all of those things. I also like how, oh gosh, I'm going to sound like such a bad fan when I say this. I can't remember her friend's name. Susanna. I liked Susanna. Susanna was a really good friend, and when they're hanging out at their favorite place, eating their goulash, I just felt like their conversation was real and believable. It wasn't this made-up conversation. It's almost like Laini heard girls talking in a cafe, and she wrote down exactly what they were saying. The vernacular was there. It was slangy, but not so slangy, like she was trying to sound cool. I mean, the inside jokes seemed like they had been established for years, and I like that. It was like I was coming into this familiar world. So all of those things were fantastic. And then we met Akiva, the angel. And at first, I did not like him at all. And it was kind of like, and maybe you felt this way, maybe you didn't. It was kind of like reading New Moon in the Twilight Trilogy, and you're Team Edward, and the whole time you're reading about Jacob, you're like, shut up, this is so boring. And that's how I felt at first with Akiva. Every time we were in his shoes, I was like, can we just get back to Karoo, because seriously, I'm bored. But that didn't last for very long, because eventually I started to see how he really fit into the story. He wasn't just there. And also, the whole time, I'm anticipating this paranormal romance. And I'm just thinking, you're going to screw this book up for me, Akiva. Don't you do it. Don't you make her fall in love with you. So, yeah, I think I just hated him automatically just because of the potential paranormal romance. But as the plot unfolds, I'm trying not to reveal many spoilers, I started to like him a little bit more. I felt like the paranormal romance was done well. I felt like it wasn't too clingy. It wasn't so instant. But it also wasn't like, oh, I hate that guy. Why would I ever like that guy? And then you do that forever, and then finally you're like, okay, I guess I like the guy. I mean, the timing was believable. The way everything happened was believable. And it never went too far. It never went into sap, which I was really afraid that it would. I was afraid that this amazing story was going to turn into every other young adult book I've read about romance, where that is the focus. And Laini, I am so, so thankful that you did not let that take over this story, because if you would have, it would have just been awful. Because although romance is nice, I'm a Libra, I love romance, but it can really ruin a story if it's not done right. So this was done so well. Then we get to the end where we're learning more about magical and how all that ties into the story. And I really liked learning about magical. I liked learning about the difference between someone who was pure and someone who wasn't pure. I forget the terms that they use, and I'm probably not going to be able to find it. But I really liked that differentiation. And I also really loved finding out what Brimstone did. Because you're like, okay, he collects teeth. That's really great. What the hell does that mean? So I really, really liked finding that out too. Now, and then not to mention the ending, I'm like, And Days of Blood and Starlight came out like 2 days before I had finished The Daughter of Smoke and Bone. But I've been put on a book buying ban, so I can't buy it and I can't read it yet. So I'm trying to be good, and I'm going to read it once I actually receive it. Because I'm 90% sure that's going to happen. But if not, I'm going to go out and buy it as soon as I have the money to, once the ban is lifted. So I'm really excited to read the next one. And as far as reviews are concerned, I've heard amazing things. It sounds like it's just action-packed, and the romance isn't... well, I mean, the romance isn't really a focus. If you read the book, you probably, know why. But, yeah, so this is just 5 stars. I have a 5-star system, like Goodreads, kind of. So, yeah, 5 stars for this book, all the way. I would give it 10 if it was a 10-star system. Now, I did have a couple things that were... or maybe just one thing that kind of bothered me about this book. And it was more about flow than anything else. And it wasn't so much of a problem that it demoted by any stars, like a half star or anything. It's still a 5-star book. But I really had trouble towards the middle and end of the book when we were switching perspectives. And especially once we were like in one reality and then into another reality. It got confusing. I could handle switching back between Akiva and Karoo and figuring that out. I really liked those different perspectives. But then, especially when we start talking about Madrigal, it took me a minute to figure out that this was officially a flashback and that we were going to stay here for a while. And I had to kind of flip back a couple pages and be like, okay, wait a minute. And at the time... I had my suspicions that ended up being correct about why we were learning about Madrigal. But I wasn't quite sure. There was still a little bit of mystery involved, so I thought maybe there was something else. But yeah, it took me a minute to really get to that point. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think before we officially get into that Madrigal stage, we kind of glimpse it a couple times. So going back and forth was just confusing. Once we were officially in that Madrigal mode, I was there. And I was really kind of bummed when we got out of it because I was so invested. But it was definitely essential to the story, and I think that it really added a spice with a twist right after it, because you think, oh my gosh, everything's going to be great now, and then boom, something's not great. And I like that. It kept me guessing. So, right when you think someone's a good guy or a bad guy, you're like, wait a minute, and then all of a sudden it changes. So, and I wouldn't even say bad. Like, possible spoiler. Take you a second to stop your film if you want to. But, Akiva at the end, I was like, what the It's like, what are you doing? And I was so mad. But I wouldn't necessarily classify him as bad. I don't hate him. I mean, I hate him, but he's not a black character. Like, if we're talking black and white. He's kind of gray still to me. So, I like the potential that there is possibly for him for redemption, I suppose. But, end spoiler. But yeah, this is so amazing. I can't wait to read the next book. It's called The Days of Blood and Starlight. This is a very long review, and I hope you share my passion about this book, because I thought it was really, really good. If you disagree, or if you agree, I'd love to have comments or video responses, or if you've done a review to this before, you can link it to mine, and I can watch that, because I'm still very new. I don't know all the booktubers yet, so, I'd really like to see everybody else's reviews, because why not, right? So anyway, Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. I would recommend it to absolutely everybody, and I think that everyone would love it. So thank you very much for watching my very first book review. I have a couple more that I plan on doing today, so watch out for those. Bye, guys.